right, so we'll be back right on the live. Okay, we're live, everyone. So we're gonna try to see how far we can get, everyone. We might be on for like another 30 minutes to an hour on this recording, just trying to get as far as we can. So our next note I have here is Leviticus 9:13. Okay, so LXX says, and they brought the whole burnt offering according to its pieces, them and the head he put upon the altar. Okay, so again, we have burnt offering versus whole burnt offering. There seems to be a difference here. Again, it could possibly be a translator bias too, that they didn't understand what Holocaust actually meant. It's very, very possible. So can't really hold too much against them in that aspect. It could be just English translators didn't know what they're doing. Very possible, in my opinion. Hold on a second. Let me get back to the document here. It's on the wrong thing on the shared screen. So we're going to move on to Leviticus 9:14. Burnt offering versus whole burnt offering. There seems to be a difference here. Again, it could possibly be a translator. All right. Okay. Hold on a second. I don't want that to keep going in the background. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So let me make sure I'm on the right thing on the share screen. Let me go to new share and make sure, yeah, it's on the right thing. Okay. So Leviticus 9:14. Okay. LXX I have here has placed. Okay. So, let me see if that's correct there. So there's a difference there with the word placed being there, and Mazer doesn't have it. Okay, so, and he washed the belly and the feet with water, and he put them on the whole burnt offering on the altar. He washed the entrails and legs and burned them with the burnt offering on the slaughter place. So for whatever reason, the phrase "he put them" is not in the Masoretic. And let me just double check. I'll go into the Strong's here just to make sure. And again, these are not huge differences, but these are like little subtle differences in my opinion. Because these are, it's making it more specific. It's telling the reader what he's actually doing with this commandment. And so he washed the belly and the feet in the water, and they placed G2007, the whole burnt offering, upon the altar. Now, for some reason, the Masoretes thought that wasn't important enough to leave in there. I don't know, something weird. It just says he did wash the inwards and the legs and burnt them upon the burnt offering on the altar. And you could make the argument that, you know, it says though they burnt them on the altar, so you could make the assumption, yeah, that would be including him putting it on the altar. But again, I just find it weird that they would leave a phrase like that out, that he put it upon the altar. I don't know. That's just me. Very strange to me. Let's see here, and we have the same difference here in verse 17 of Leviticus 9. All right, so let me just make sure that's up there. Yeah, that's up there. Okay, so now we're going to go to Leviticus 19, verse 17. Okay. Are you sure you don't want there on law?
No, I'm fine.
All right.
Leviticus 19?
Yeah, verse 17.
Chapter 19.
No, chapter 9, verse 17.
Okay.
He also brought the grain offering and filled his hand with it. He burned it on the slaughter place besides the burnt offering of the morning. Okay, so again, it's leaving out that he laid it on the altar. The Septuagint says he laid it on the altar. So again, just a subtle difference there. Okay, so the Masoretic leaves out he laid it on the altar. So now we're going to be moving on. Same chapter there in chapter 9. We're going to go to verse 21, where there's a little subtle difference in the wording here. Okay. Choice versus wave offering. And I don't know, that's more of a subtle wording. I might skip that because that's more of a subtle wording. Wave versus choice. That's kind of like not. I don't know if that's necessary to go through that because that's just a difference in wording there. Let me see here. LXX though in verse 22 of chapter 9 has again whole burnt offering. Chapter 9 verse 24 whole burnt offering again. Okay, then we go to chapter 10 verse 14 to 15 choice offering. So that's subtle difference there. Here's one of the major differences I really want to show you guys on the shared screen. This is one of the major differences. In chapter 14, verse 4 of Leviticus, you have spun twined is not in the text of the Masoretic. So I wanted to show you guys this. And I was sharing this with Brother Joshua earlier in the week about how these Masoretes loved to leave this phrase out a lot for some reason. First occurrence of this is in verse 4 of chapter 14. And the priest shall give directions. They shall take for him that is cleansed 2 clean live birds, cedar and cedar wood, and spun scarlet and hyssop. So where it has scarlet in the Masoretic text, there is no, the word spun is not there for some reason. And just to prove to you guys, we'll go, I'll switch to my eSword here and I'll show you the Hebrew text or how it's not there in the Hebrew. Okay, chapter 14, verse 4, just says scarlet. And for some weird reason in the Hebrew, there's 2 words that mean scarlet, or 2 words that are supposedly that mean scarlet. You got tula, and then shani. I don't know how both of those mean scarlet. I don't know what's going on there. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
What does it say in the Greek? And then second, that's really weird that second word means maggot.
Yeah, I don't know if there's something wrong with the Strong's there because it's saying both words mean scarlet, and I don't know how that's possible. Here in the Greek, you have the word for twined, which the Masoretic is missing somehow. For spun scarlet, you got twined G2831, and then scarlet G2847 kokinos. So the Masoretic is the Hebrew is missing actually the spun word for spun or twined is not there. According to what I'm looking at the King James key to the Strong's here, there's no. You have shani, crimson, scarlet, stuff dyed with it, crimson, properly insect, the insect or its color. I doubt they were using dye from an insect. Seriously doubt that. No. Yeah, there's something going on with the Strong's Concordance.
Brother, there is a sister that taught on the colors, how they get the colors, and it is by insects, urchins, and stuff like that. I'll have to share. Hopefully, she's still alive, but she did a beautiful study on the colors and how they got them, and there is insects.
The only way I could see that being scriptural that they would use ink from insects is if the insect's alive. If they're getting that from a dead insect, then you have ceremonial uncleanness and all that. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I would say that certain insects definitely leave behind a trail even while alive. You have snails and slugs leaving behind a trail, like of almost like a silvery trail behind. So I don't doubt that other things could leave behind. Okay, for instance, jellyfish. You can squeeze like a jellyfish or an urchin, and it'll put out the purple.
Yes, there's a bug. There is a bug in Israel. I forgot what it is, but when you kill it, it squirts out red, and that's the only red. It's like a deep crimson red, and that bug is the only one that has that color, and that's how that's what, her study was, how they got the color, for the zits, for the different, colors that they use. And that's what I had been taught, but, maybe I can find it and share it with you.
Yeah, I could see that definitely, like Brother Joshua said, like a living insect. I could see that, like either traces left behind of the ink, like a snail or something, or even just, kind of milking it, like, I guess trying to get ink out of it like you get milk out of a cow. I guess I could kind of see that from getting that from an insect, or somehow extracting the ink from an insect while it's still alive. That's definitely possible. But what's weird about the Masoretic version is that, again, it's the spun of the spun scarlet is being missing. Like, again, here in verse 6, the word for spun in the Greek, klopos, and it said, what's interesting, it says of Chaldean origin. Klopos, Israelites, let me see here. Let me see. Thayer should give a better definition than that. Interesting that they use that word for spun. Very weird. Then you have scarlet as a separate word, kokinos, scarlet color, crimson colored, from the kernel shape of the insect. Okay, so that's a little bit more specific for the Greek version of the word. So the shape of the insect. It's interesting. But either way, I would think spun is supposed to be there in the verse. I don't know why the Masoretic leaves that. Because it seems pretty important, especially when you get into the tabernacle and all that, how they're supposed to, make the type of scarlet thread and all that. They're supposed to twine it. So verse 4 and verse 6 of chapter 14 don't have the word for spun or twined. Now, let me see here. If we go back, again, that's a very subtle difference in verse 5 over in, might skip that for now. Let me see here. Verse 13 of chapter 14, Masoretic text omits whole. So again, this is the whole burnt offering versus regular burnt offering. I think I'll skip that because now that I see it's a translator issue, I'm going to kind of, I'll kind of have to ignore that as a Masoretic text issue. That's more of a translator issue for whole burnt offering. Let me see here. So LXX here in verse 26 of Leviticus 14. LXX lacks palm. So we're going to look here and double check and make sure that's correct. So we're going to go to verse 26 of Leviticus 14. So Leviticus 14:26. And the priest shall pour. Okay, so it says here, the priest shall pour of oil of his own left hand. Okay, what was supposed to be missing here? Palm. Okay. All right, so we're going to see here if that's actually in the Masoretic, though. I'm going to go to a new shared screen and go to eSword. We're just going to see if that's the case, if it's actually there in the Hebrew. I've seen sometimes where King James will add it to the text on certain words, like the word herbs for bitter herbs is not there really in the text. So there's many times that it happens like that. Okay, so if we look at the King James with Strong's, it says, the priest shall pour of the oil into the palm of his own hand. So H3709, kaf, hand or palm. The hollow hand or palm. Interesting. Okay, let's see here with the Greek. Actually in the ABP Plus, it's showing that hand is supposed to be there. Upon his hand. Sends a creature face through hollowness. Yeah, hollowness. If it's the hollowness of his hand, that's pretty much your palm. So I think I messed up on that one. Yeah, go ahead, brother Joshua. I saw your hand was up. Oh, yeah. So I think I made a little error there. Not realizing that Greek word actually can mean the palm of someone's hand. Even though it's not a separate word from the word hand, it's indicating that it can mean the palm. So that's my fault there. So actually, palm technically is in the Greek there. So it's just not a separate word. The Hebrew, for some reason, separates it into two words. I don't know why. But so we're gonna ignore that one. All right, whole. I don't want to be redundant. That's another difference. Burnt offering versus whole burnt offering. Mainly a translator issue there in verse 31. Verse 42 of the same chapter, we have, it seems like the Masoretic text is omitting the word scraped. So I just want to double check that. Okay, so let me see here. So the Masoretic is, let's see, so that was 14 verse 42. Okay, so if we look here, it says, and they shall take other scraped stones and put them in the place of the stones, and they shall take other plaster and plaster the house. So I want to double check just to make sure the word scraped is actually in the original Greek. So what I'll do is I'll do a new share and go to my eSword here, go to share, and we're going to look to see if it's actually in the Greek. Just to make sure. So let's see here. Yep, being scraped. That's wash on hands. See, what I hate is these weird definitions. I don't know if they're taking the root word or what's going on here, but if that's translated correctly, why would it mean washed hands? I really think there's something going on. Either it's being, I really think they're taking the root as the definition. That's what they're doing with the Strong's. That's the only thing I don't like about Strong's Concordance sometimes. Yeah, to wash off? That doesn't, I don't know. Anyway, let me just say I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. It's supposed to be scraped stones, okay? The Greek word for scraped is here. Let me just check to make sure the Masoretic text actually, if it has it or not. It says, they shall take other stones. What's the word for other? Strange? Place, and he shall take other mortar and shall plaster. Go ahead, brother Joshua.
I'm not familiar with Leviticus 14, but just in those couple verses that I'm seeing, that he shall take other stones, stones scraping one another, or sharpening one another. I'm wondering if that is pointing to Gentiles in a spiritual context. He shall take other stones.
Possibly. I've noticed also two others, a very bad translation even from the Hebrew. It's it looks like more or less strange or other man, like you were saying. I would say, yeah, there's definitely a spiritual connection to Gentiles with that word, occur. Yeah, it's next, other, strange. It's one of the definitions, like a stranger. Yeah, I would agree with you that spiritually that could be pointing to Gentiles being grafted in a way. Other than that, the definitions are given for in the Greek, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know if Strong is screwing up there. But anyway, let me see. Go to verse 47. Masoretic text omits will be clean till evening. Now, this I know for a fact is a legitimate difference here. Verse 47 to 14. I think tonight we'll just finish up to the chapter 16 notes, and then we'll have to do a part 3 at another time. So let me see here. Let me just go to verse 47 of this chapter. Okay, so 14 verse 47. He that sleeps in the house shall wash his garments and be unclean until evening. And he that eats in the house shall wash his garments and be unclean until evening. So if you look at the ISR to the right of my screen here, it says, he who lies down in the house has to wash his garments, and he who eats in the house has to wash his garments. Doesn't even mention when you become clean again. Very weird. Very strange. If that's a legitimate omission, why would they do that? And if I'm not even mistaken, the Targums or other manuscripts would actually agree with the Septuagint in this verse that unclean till evening should be there. If I'm not mistaken from what I've looked at. So I don't understand why they would leave that out. Other than they got some weird rabbinic addition to the Torah that, you were still ceremoniously unclean for another couple of days. Who knows? That's the only thing I could think of why they would omit that. But I'll just double check just to make sure that is a legitimate omission. And we'll move on here. Yeah, no mention of until evening here. Okay, now if you go to the Greek, and the one going to bed in the house shall wash his garments and will be unclean until evening. And the one eating in the house, he shall wash his garments. So now what's interesting here is there seems to be a difference there in the ABP plus with the, I think the unclean till evening is supposed to be both times. Either way, yeah, I see evening down here too. So yeah, either way, I would, in my opinion, I would say that definitely I side with the LXX version of it. So I'm going to go back to the document here, try to move us along here. Okay. Verse 49, spun, twined, omitted. So the same thing as earlier we saw in the chapter. So you got verse 51, the same, spun and twined is not there in the Masoretic. Also in the Septuagint verses, the Masoretic in that verse, in verse 51, it has the word over instead of in. That could possibly be a translation issue. I'm not too sure. So I'll just check that really quick in verse 51. If not, we'll move on very quickly. But I just want to double check it. Let me see here. So let me go to the east here and go to verse 51 here. Let's see. He shall take the cedar wood and the spun scarlet. Okay, so let me go and look at the Hebrew here. So he shall take the hyssop and the scarlet. Yeah, there's no spun here. And also we go sprinkle the house 7 times, dip them in blood, slaying the bird. Okay, and the living he shall dip them into blood. Small bird having slain over water living, and he shall sprinkle the house 7 times. Yeah, so the main difference really here is the spun scarlet from what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing anything else really. The twined there is there in the Greek, what they're translating twined as is in there in the Greek, but not in the Hebrew. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to move along quickly. That's all I can really find there. Okay. Same thing with verse 52, it seems here. Same problem here. Spawn is omitted. Now we're going to go to verse 57 of the same chapter. Verse 57, it seems like the Masoretic text has omitted day. So we're going to go there real quick. We're going to look at the word day in verse 57 of chapter 14. So now we're going to look at, okay, so we're going to go down here. All right, let's see here. And to teach them what is unclean and when it is clean, this is the Torah of leprosy. Not seeing really any difference there. I think I messed up there because I'm not seeing much of a difference. That's like a very little wording difference there. Oh no, okay, I see why. All right, that's why. Okay, so the word yom is not there. That's why I reference that. So in the Greek, it has the Greek for yom, day. There, it's saying in when it is unclean in the Hebrew, but it's not being specific enough. It's not saying, in which day. It just says in when it is unclean. So very weird that would be that would be left out of the text for some reason. And we can go that real quick, just to double check here. I mean, again, you could assume that when it is unclean is referring to the day that it's unclean, but I just find it very weird that, like, why would they leave that word out? I don't know. And actually, it's not even there. It is from the English, it's not even there in the Hebrew. So the Masoretic would read as to teach when unclean and when clean. This, the law of leprosy. That's how it would read from the Hebrew. So I don't know. To me, that's just very general. Like, I'm a very specific person. Like, you could say, you got to spell it out for me. I don't like when details are left out. To me, I don't know. That's very generalized, in my opinion. If you know Torah, that's one thing. But like, if you're someone that's freshly new convert into knowing Yahushua and his Torah, it's like, okay, when what? I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Okay, again, Leviticus 15:20, translated from the Masoretic, is just translated as burnt offering versus whole burnt offering. Again, that could be, like I said, it looks to be a translator issue. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that. We've had many verses where I showed that where it's not even the Masoretes' fault. Can't really blame them on that one. Leviticus 16. Now we're up to 16 here. 16 verse 2. It seems like the Masoretic text is lacking testimony or witness. The word testimony or witness. So we're going to check that real quick, just to make sure that's the case. All right, so we're going to look at Leviticus 16, verse 2. Okay, so the Masoretic would read as, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, speak to Aaron, your brother, and not come in at all times to the set apart place inside the veil before the lid of the atonement, which is on the ark, lest he die. Because I appear in the cloud above the lid of atonement. So let's see here. The difference there in the Septuagint says, Yahuwah said to Moshe, speak to Aaron, your brother, let him not come in at all times in the set apart place within the veil before the propitiatory or atonement, which is upon the ark of witness. So again, witness or testimony is nowhere in the text in the Hebrew. In the Greek, it's there. It's just called the ark in the Masoretic text. It's not called the ark of witness or testimony for some reason, but it is in the Septuagint. For some weird reason, they leave that part out. I don't know what would be the point of that. I don't know why they're going through the trouble to omit one word like that. It's very weird. It's like they're going through the trouble to like omit certain things. See here, coming out all the time to set apart place in the veil, which is upon the ark, just as ark. So just ark. Aron, interesting. Really? That's what ark is? Aron, like Aaron? It's interesting. Our chest coffin. It's interesting. And again, the difference in the Septuagint in the Greek here, it says, inside the veil at the front of the atonement seat, which is upon the ark, G2787, the set apart ark. And then it says of the testimony or witness, G3142, Marturion. Interesting. Okay, so this word here is not in the Masoretic of Leviticus 16, verse 2. Just showing that. Okay, now let's go to finish off chapter 16 here, and I think we'll call it a night. So let me just move on here to verse 3 of this chapter. Okay. Again, we got whole burnt offering, LXX from verse 3, verse 5. Translated into English as whole burnt offering instead of burnt offering. Again, I apologize. That's mainly a translator issue. Can't really say it's a Masoretic text difference. Okay, so let's move on to verse 15 of Leviticus 16. Masoretic text omitted before Yahuwah. So we're going to look at Yahuwah's name for, what is it, a fourth time now? Okay, so his name for a fourth time is omitted. So we're going to look at verse 15 here. So Leviticus 16, verse 15. Okay, so all right, here we go. The people offering the sin offering for the people. So we see here, he shall kill the goat for the sin offering, that is for the people before Yahuwah. So the phrase before Yahuwah is not in the Hebrew. Okay. And again, if you want, we can go very quickly just to show you from the Greek and the Hebrew that that's the case. Okay. So here's from the Greek. Let me just go all the way down to verse 15 here. And he shall slay the young he-goat, the one for a sin offering, and the one for the people before, the Greek word before there. And then you have Kurios, Yahuwah. Now, if you go to the King James with the Strongs, the H3068 is nowhere to be found in this verse. So that's 4 different times the Masoretes are omitting his name just in Leviticus alone. So I'm going to make a little physical note real quick. Number 4. Okay. All right. So now we're moving on to verse 17. My bad. The LXX has set apart place in Leviticus 16, verse 17. So now we're going to look at Leviticus 16, 17. So let's go to new share. And we'll go to the word software real quick. Now we're going to move down a couple here. Okay. Same chapter here, verse 17. And no man should be in the tent of appointment when he goes in to make atonement in the set apart place. I got it. Wow. I stand corrected. Okay. So this was a translator issue. Because you actually see both translations, credit to the scriptures here. They have set apart place. So does the Septuagint, set apart place. So I stand corrected again. I'm trying to remember what translation I used for the Masoretic to test the LXX versus the Masoretic. It might have been the King James. So to be fair, it was probably a poor version to test against. So anyway, all right, moving on to verse 20. Okay, so we have the Masoretic text omitting cleansing. We're going to make sure that's the case. We're going to go 3 verses down from where we were just at and go to verse 20. Okay, we're almost done, guys, for tonight. We only got like 2 or 3 more bullet points, and then we'll save the rest for next time. Okay, so let's see, verse 20 here in this chapter. The scapegoat. And here we go. So it says, he shall finish atoning for the set apart place and the tent of appointment and the slaughter place. He shall bring the live goat. Now here, as you can see, Masoretes don't have, he shall make a cleansing for the priests. For whatever reason, that phrase, he shall make a cleansing, it's not mentioned. Why? I don't know. It's very strange to me.
Mine says making atonement.
Yeah, well, the atonement part's supposed to be there in the Masoretic, but there's another statement at the end of the verse. Like it reads from the LXX, he shall finish making atonement for the set apart place and for the tabernacle witness and for the altar, and he shall make cleansing for the priest. So cleansing for the priest is not even, it's not even there in the Hebrew. So you can see this here. If we go to Esor real quick, go to verse 20. Okay, so he has made it and reconciling, meaning, atonement, the set apart place, and tabernacle congregation, and the altar he shall bring the live goat. Masoretic, nowhere in the Masoretic does it mention cleansing the priests.
I find it interesting how they have to hold their head. They have to grab the, it's just interesting,
See, right here in the Greek, it says, and for the priest to make a cleansing. So it's saying that this Azazel goat sacrifice is also to cleanse the priests as well. The Septuagint is showing. So that's the difference. That whole phrase and make a cleansing for the priest. Yep, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Yeah, but Doug, all the Jews are priests and they're already cleansed.
Yeah, I guess in their mind, the priests don't need to be cleansed. Our priests are perfect.
Yeah.
They don't need that. Oh boy. Verse 24, the Masoretic text has omitted for his house again. Not shocking, we see that before. So this is the second time they omit and for his house. Very weird. So also whole burnt offering versus burnt offering in the LXX there. Then we go to verse 29. Masoretic text has soul. The Greek has spirit. I'm just going to show that real quick, the difference with the commandment of how to annul ourselves, why people misunderstand what this means, because they look at the wonderful Strong's Concordance that says appetite for nefesh. I'm going to touch on that a whole nother day, how that doesn't necessarily mean appetite, nefesh. But anyway, nefesh, if you understand the concept of nefesh is the combination of body and spirit. It's not one or the other. Okay, so number one, to say it specifically means appetite, I think you're cherry picking with the Strong's Concordance, in my opinion. Anyway, but the Septuagint clearly debunks that interpretation of the word being used there. If you look at the Greek here, it says, you shall humble your G5590 suke, which, by the way, is not soul, spirit. Okay. So it actually say, if Brenton would have translated this correctly, it should say, you shall humble your spirit, your ruach, not your nefesh. Okay. It says breath. Okay. Breath, that is implication, spirit. Abstractly or concretely. Okay. Whatever that means. Thus distinguishing on one hand from G4151. Okay, which is the rational immortal soul. I would disagree with immortal soul. That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day, but that's an incorrect Christian doctrine that's taught. But anyway, the point is the definition, though, is showing that it's your breath, the breath of life who it gave you is a suke. It's not your body plus your breath of life. So that's the difference what the Greek is saying and what the Hebrew is saying. Even if you go to the Hebrew, okay, so let's say it's humble your nefesh, right? Nefesh doesn't necessarily all the time refer to someone's appetite. So again, in my opinion, I know this is a whole different topic, but you're cherry picking with definitions is what's going on here. Nefesh means vitality. a breathing creature that is abstractly vitality used for very very widely in a literal, accommodator, figurative sense, bodily or mental. So if it's your mind, obviously that's not your appetite. Okay, so the fact of the matter is the difference here is in the Hebrew, it's both spirit and body. In the Greek, it's being more specific. What you're humbling your ruach. Anyway, moving on. So it makes a lot more sense in the Septuagint, in my opinion. I go with the Septuagint, makes a lot more sense. And there's certain, I don't have time to get into it, but there's certain extra biblical literature that actually agree with the Septuagint rendering of Leviticus 16:29. So anyway, so let's see here. Leviticus 16:31, Sabbath of Sabbaths. So there's a difference here too. The Masoretic here is just mentioning, oh, it's just a Sabbath, right? It's a Sabbath. The Day of Atonement's a Sabbath. But if you look at the Septuagint, it's translated sometimes as a most set apart Sabbath, or it's translated usually most of the time as a Sabbaton of Sabbaton, meaning it's like a Sabbath of Sabbaths. It's a very important Sabbath, the Day of Atonement, very important. It's, in my opinion, what it means in the Greek, Sabbaton of Sabbatons, it's like an extremely important Sabbath, like a very high Sabbath. So you have G4521 twice in this verse. So Sabbath of Sabbaths, or Shabbat of Shabbats, is what the Greek is saying there. Versus if you look in the Masoretic, I think it just says a Sabbath. It's a Sabbath. Yeah, a Sabbath of rest unto you. That's literally what the Hebrew says of the Masoretic. To me, the Septuagint is pointing that it's a lot more important than just a Sabbath. Anyway, so I think we're gonna save the rest, guys, for next time. It's getting a little late on the Eastern Standard Time out here for all of our mishpaka that have, tried to stay up with us. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you guys being troopers out there and staying up with us to study with us. Please stay tuned, everyone, to a part 3. That's all we should need realistically is one more recording, and this study should be finished. I pray that this was a very educational, very uplifting, edifying study for all that were involved so far, and hopefully it's encouraged you to actually look to test out more versions of the Tanakh, of the scriptures that are available to us, and not be complacent with, these, for lack of a better word, rabbinical Old Testaments that were unfortunately trusted on by the Protestants. Even though they meant well, in my opinion, they made the wrong decision trusting the Masoretes rather than a Tanakh that was used by the disciples, by Yahushua himself, and has been preserved in certain orthodoxy, even in the Christian religion. So anyway, hope to see you guys next time. And all of our brothers and sisters out there, have a great rest of your Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.